ordinary blueprints tutorial about the basics, like what are variables, how to create functions and macros. So pretty much whenever you want to add a new blueprint, because that's how it starts, you just right click blueprint class and you choose the base class. Because if you don't know what's an inheritance, then well shit, learn SIP, learn OOP. Because well, if you want to know what you're actually doing and not just clicking mindlessly buttons to make things work, then you have to learn OOP, like what's inheritance, what are classes, objects, so on and so forth. But if you want to just make stuff work and do it, then sure, let's go for it. So I'm choosing an actor, and let me name this let's say actor. Alright, let's be AC Turner. So now I've got my window, and you can see I've got my viewport with nothing except this ball, which is my default scene node, and some construction script, event graph, and some buttons and everything. So pretty much components, we can add some stuff. Let's say I want to add a static mesh. Alright, got my mesh right here, and I want to replace it with something simple. Let's say cube. Alright, so I've got my cube, and right now I can just save it. And right here, if I place my cube, alright, so the first thing you can see is my cube is going under the word, and I don't want that. So to fix that, you can see that there's a certain grid, and my cube is literally in it's crossing probably the middle of that. So I can just move my cube a bit higher, like this. Should be enough. And now, as you can see, my cubes are not going under the floor, which is pretty helpful, in my case at least. So for the blueprints, the first thing is you've got those components that you can add here, and you can change the inheritance for them. So I can add a sphere, and static mesh can inherit from sphere. And now if I move sphere, both move, I can also Control Z to take it back. But if I remove the inheritance, if I move sphere, it is not moving. So pretty much the objects, if you have the hierarchy of child and father, then pretty much the child always follows the father. Also, you've got those options to go to your construction script, and this is pretty much your constructor. Everything happens at the start. So pretty much I can say, alright, so before that, those things right here, when you add them, you automatically get your variables. Here are your variables, functions, macros, and graphs. And the graphs are pretty much just whole graph with nodes. Those nodes are C++ code that has a next level of abstraction where you can script with those blueprints, because it's easier from designers, artists, so on and so forth, and you don't always need your C++ code for performance and today's hardware, because it's actually not that weak. So right now I've got those variables, and now if I, for example, click on this, I see some things like what's the type of this variable, the name, what's this category. I can, for example, later add some categories where I can do some dividing. For example, there's a category of components, and you can see, alright, I can either make it smaller or bigger. I also have some property flags and events that are for the static mesh. I also have my scene root, and if I want to add a variable, I just click on that, and I've got my variable. Now you can compile that, and pretty much I've got whether or not, what's the type of the variable. You can either do one of the basic types, like boolean, byte, integer 64, float, so on and so forth, structures, interfaces, tons of different stuff. You've got your name, so let's say this will be my log div, which is just a location difference, and I can just choose a vector, and I can say, alright, is this editable? So pretty much If this is edit pool, I can either click on this I or click on this boolean. Right now, as you can see, I have my log div, but if I like hide it, like set it to false, I don't see it. So pretty much it helps people who place something in level to actually just set something instantly. We also have like blueprint read only, so can we actually set this or not? Tooltip, so let's say stuff, and now I've got my tooltip stuff over it. Control Alt for more, and we can see the engine built in tooltip. If that's like show 3D widget for that, and we don't really want that right now. Expose on spawn means whenever I create a new, let's say, spawn actor from class, and let's say it actor. Right now, if I make it expose on spawn, you can see whenever I'm spawning this actor, I'm pretty much spawning it. Also, whenever I want to add node, just right click somewhere and you've got this whole search with different categories and whether or not it's context sensitive, because in certain cases, whenever you drag something, there's a certain context that is actually checked by the C++ code under the hood. Alright, what's the context for that? But you can just say, alright, fuck context, let me choose whatever I want. So that's one thing. And this actually in context targets. Whether or not it's private, and private pretty much means that this can only be used by this blueprint. Like, again, if you don't know what's private, just go under OOP. And later I've got my category, replication, and replication is just stuff related to networking, and my category, like I can set it to components, and right now it's one of the components, or I can set it to default, and now it's not a part of components. Simple as that. I also got my class settings, which is the base class settings, and I've got here like what's my parent class, what are the interfaces, blueprint options, so forth. The class defaults, which is tick. Tick is a method that runs each frame, and the delta seconds is the difference in time between each frame. So pretty much I can just do a print string to show it and print the delta seconds. Now I can just click play, and as you can see in my left corner you've got the print string, and it shows the time difference between the frames, and also it prints out each frame. And to see my frames I can just go to my top left and do show FPS. So I'm pretty much getting this around 120 times per second. So that's the first thing, and that's how event tick works. The next thing is event begin play, and event begin play works on start of the game. So pretty much right now we can say I have this hello, and right now if I place a second actor I will get 2 hellos, because this is just another object. I can place as many as I want, and I can just select them, copy them, and now I have 4. Like, this is working like just a typical object that you just created here. It's here, like you can see the mesh is drawing, but the logic itself is there. So if I created few ticks and they were to print different stuff, then I would have like tons of different informations. Also, I've got a begin overlap. This works when you have some collision. For example, I can go to my viewport and say, I want to add some collision, sphere collision. All right, let's make it a bit bigger. Okay, and now on begin overlap, I can just print string hello. I can press play, go to it, and you can see I overlap it with them. So I've got my hello, because I got into the collision. And of course, when you have those, let's say, collision stuff, sphere 1, you also have like begin overlap, end overlap, like what happens, and tons of different stuff, but we are not going through that. I can also like print what's the display name of other actor, and when I'm connecting stuff, when I want to disconnect something, I can just hold my Alt and disconnect, and that's the easiest way. And also if I want a context, I can just draw it like this, and I get a context for a string, or context for an object, and not everything, or context for an X, which is execution pin, which is this one. Also you can see this thing, this is like, I can add some custom events that can be bind to some other calls which we'll go through later. That can be actually, we can call this begin play overlap event tick by a delegate, and delegate is just a kind of event when something happens, then do this. Like you're binding and unbinding stuff in simple words. Pretty much I can also find, for example, I want to see tick, and alright, here's my tick, cool. I can add some dispatchers, macros, and to add a function I can just go to plus function or override some unrules one, and here's my function. I can change the name to f1, and here for example I can add some inputs, outputs. I can add a description, whether it's pure or not. If it's pure, for example, I can go to my event graph and just drag it. That's a pure function. But if I change it to a non-pure function, then you can see it has the execution piece. Alright. So the next thing is, in the functions you can do pretty much whatever you want, and also when I get my log div, I can just, instead of clicking on this outputs, new parameter, looking for vector, and then I can finally connect that, nope. Just get this, dragged here, drop it, instantly generated. So fast and simple. Like, this is pretty much Blueprints. Whenever you want to do something fast, you choose Blueprints if the performance allows you to do so. And yeah, you also get macros, and macros allows you to, I mean, the main difference is in macros you can have multiple like executions. For example, I can have exec, how many execs I want, and now if I go here, I can just drop my macro and I've got many different execs, and I can choose some different paths, like what happens when, and that's like how it pretty much works. And now for the construction script, finally. A construction script works in a way that is a constructor, but a constructor works like in your viewport when you're actually doing stuff. So for example, I can say I can get my static mesh. When I'm dragging my variables, I've got get, set, and I can either choose it, get or set, or I can actually hold my control button and it will get me an instant getter, or hold my alt button and it will get me an instant setter. And also whenever I have my getter and I want to make sure that I'm not operating on some invalid data like garbage or null pointer or whatever, I can just right click on that and go to convert to validated get. So I'm making sure that, alright, it is valid, and if it's not, then let's do something else. So that's it. I can also like select multiple stuff and comment it, say events, and I can change the color of the comment, let's say to dark like this, and I can see, alright, here are the events, cool, color bubble, hey. So that's the one thing. But yeah, construction script, we get our log div, and I can say, alright, static mesh, and let's say I want to set world location, and the set world location will be get world location, and I can just say plus vector, and let's say I want to add 15z. Or actually just add the log div because that's why I created it. Alright, so I have this, and I can just change my log div, and as you can see, it's moving. Like, it's a little pointless because I already have my location and it works on everything, but this works only on this component. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Like that, the construction script just works when you're already in the editor and you can edit stuff, so you can see what exactly happens. And this is one of those ways to go. And I can also like add new override functions, local variables, dispatchers, and through the rest will go in like another videos. This is it for the basics of Blueprints. Thank you for watching, and I see you in the next one.